The Galactic Council had many names for Earth's inhabitants: primitives, warmongers, irrational, but the one that stuck, whispered in the corridors of 1,000 alien vessels, was honeybadgers, creatures that simply refused to acknowledge when they were. OUTMATCHED. Roman stood on the observation deck of the UNSC Retribution, his calloused hands pressed against the cold plasteel viewport. Beyond the transparent barrier, the wreckage of the colony ship New Hope drifted in pieces, its hull torn open like a gutted fish. 300 souls had been aboard, 300 men, women, and children, who had been traveling to the agricultural colony of Kepler-442b. The Zuthari Empire had called them. Acceptable collateral damage in their territorial dispute with the Varian Collective. Roman's jaw clenched. His weathered face, scarred from a dozen skirmishes, remained expressionless, but his gray eyes burned with something the galaxy would soon learn to fear. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Commander Kendall approached, her military boots clicking against the deck plating. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her uniform was immaculate despite the chaos of the past 72 hours. She carried a datapad, but Roman knew she wasn't here to deliver a routine report. "They're calling it an accident," Kendall said, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. The Zothari ambassador issued a statement. "They've offered to pay reparations 5,000 credits per casualty." Roman didn't turn from the view. 5,000 credits, he repeated slowly, as if tasting the words and finding them bitter. "That's what they think a human life is worth." "The Council has accepted their apology," Kendall continued. "They're pressuring Earth's diplomatic corps to do the same. They say that pursuing this further would destabilize the entire sector." Now Roman did turn. At 63 years old, he was one of the oldest serving officers in the United Nations Space Command, a relic from the days when humanity was still learning to navigate the political minefield of galactic society. He had fought in the water wars on Mars, had survived the Titan Rebellion, and had lost his own daughter to a pirate raid that 3 different alien governments had called regrettable but unavoidable. That Galsy had taught him that humans were considered expendable. "Kendall," he said quietly, "how many of those casualties were children?" She didn't need to check her death. 80. The youngest was 6 months old. Roman nodded slowly, something crystallizing in his expression. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them I'm invoking Article 7 of the Human Protection Doctrine." Kendall's eyes widened. Article 7 had never been used. It was the nuclear option, the declaration that permitted human military forces to act independently of galactic law when human lives were deemed threatened. "Sir, the Council will see that as an act of war." "The Zathari already declared war," Roman said, his voice like gravel. "They just didn't realize it yet. They killed 87 children and called it collateral. We're going to teach them a lesson the hard way, the human way." The term honeybadger had been coined by a Varian anthropologist who had studied Earth's fauna. The honeybadger, she had written, was a creature that fought predators 10 times its size, that raided beehives despite being stung thousands of times, that refused to back down or acknowledge pain. It was, she concluded, the perfect metaphor for humanity, a species too stubborn or too stupid to know when it was beaten. Over the next 3 weeks, the Zathari Empire learned why that comparison was more accurate than anyone had realized. Roman didn't attack military targets. That would have been expected, conventional. Instead, Kendall's intelligence division identified every Zathari commercial vessel, every trade route, every economic asset within 6 systems. The Retribution and her sister ships didn't destroy them. That would have been too quick, too clean. They disabled them, stranded them, left them drifting with life support intact but engines dead, forcing the Zathari to mount expensive rescue operations for their own people. Every vessel carried a message burned into its hull plating in Zathari script. "You called our children collateral. We call this reciprocity." The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. The Zathari demanded Roman's arrest for piracy and terrorism. Earth's diplomatic corps scrambled to distance themselves from his actions. Roman didn't care. Kendall stood beside him in the command center as reports flooded in. The Zathari economy was hemorrhaging credits by the hour. Insurance companies were refusing to cover vessels traveling through human-adjacent space. 3 Zathari colony worlds were experiencing supply shortages. They're requesting negotiations, Kendall reported, a hint of satisfaction in her professional tone. "The Zathari ambassador wants to discuss terms." "No," Roman said simply. "Sir, no negotiations. Not yet. They need to understand something first." He activated the ship-wide communication system, his message broadcasting not just to his crew but to every listening post, every diplomatic channel, every corner of the galaxy where someone might be paying attention. "This is Captain Roman Castellano of the UNSC Retribution, speaking to the Zathari Empire and the Galactic Council. You called our children collateral damage. You put a price on their lives as if they were cargo lost in transit. You did this because you thought humans would accept your apology, take your credits, and move on like civilized members of the galactic community." His voice hardened. "You were wrong. Humans are not civilized, not when our children are murdered. We are honeybadgers. We don't care about your superior technology, your ancient empires, your political alliances. You can call us primitives, warmongers, irrational. You can outnumber us 1,000 to 1. But when you kill our children and call it acceptable, you're not dealing with a civilized species anymore. You're dealing with something that will tear through every convention, every treaty, every rule you hold sacred, because none of that matters more than the lives you destroyed. Kendall watched as his message spread across the galaxy, watched as alien diplomats scrambled to respond, watched as the weight of human fury made itself known to a cosmos that had always dismissed Earth as insignificant. Roman turned to her, and for the first time in weeks, something like satisfaction crossed his face. "Now," he said, "we can talk about negotiations, but this time they'll remember that human lives aren't collateral, they're non-negotiable." The Zethari Empire would eventually pay far more than 5,000 credits per casualty. They would issue formal apologies, change their military engagement protocols, and establish a fund for human victims of interstellar conflict. But more importantly, the galaxy learned a lesson it should have understood from the beginning. Never mistake humanity's desire for peace as inability to wage war. Never assume that a species willing to negotiate is a species that can be dismissed. And never ever call a human child collateral damage. The Honeybadgers were done being underestimated.